Hi, my name is Christopher Lee, and I'm going to show you how to do the I-129F application, which is the application for a fiancé visa. The purpose of the fiancé visa is to bring your fiancé over to the United States and to marry him or her within 90 days so that she or he can apply for a green card. Okay, so first thing is to get the form. We have to go to the uscis.gov government website to get the form. Go to the Forms tab and pick all USCIS forms. And then you go down, go all the way down until you get to I-129F Petition for Alien Fiancé. Go to Form Details. Click here to get your form. Okay, so once you get your form, what you should do is save it on your desktop. Close your form and then open it up with your Adobe Reader. So here we have your the application form to apply for your fiancé visa. Okay, so if you look at this form, you'll see here that they're asking you for alien registration number. Okay, as you look at number one, you see the alien registration number. You would leave this blank unless you applied for a fiancé visa beforehand and your fiancé actually got an A number or alien registration number from the USCIS. If she doesn't have it, you just leave it blank. If you're not sure, you should just leave it blank. The USCIS number is also an account number that the USCIS gives you if you applied for a fiancé visa. If you have already applied for a fiancé visa, they will give you this account number. So if you don't have it, just leave it blank. The Social Security number, this is where the petitioner or the person who is sponsoring the fiancé would put their security number here. So let's go ahead and put your security number here. So here we have the security number. On number 4, you would pick fiancé visa. This one here is for spouse. So here we're just doing the fiancé, so you pick fiancé visa. You would say no here because you're applying for a fiancé visa and not a spouse. You put your name here, put your last name first. I use all capital for last name, and then first name and middle name if you have a middle name. And then you go to the next section, which is section 7 here. If you have used other different names, you would put your other names here that you've used. If not, leave it blank. And then here you put your mailing address. So we here put John Doe. And here you will put your mailing address. One, 2, 3 Main Street. And if you have an apartment number or suite number, floor, you would put it here. Put Duluth. Pick here, Georgia. Postal code. Okay, here if you would have foreign addresses, you would put the province and postal code if you're living outside the United States. If you are living outside the United States, then you need to contact an immigration attorney because that would cause some problems if you are outside the United States, if you're living outside the United States. Is your mailing address the same as your physical address? Here you can say yes or no. Let's say ours, in this case, ours is yes. And then you will go down here. Since your physical address is the same, you don't need to fill this out. Notice that you can't. And now here you notice that you can't put the date here. If your physical address is the same as your mailing address, you would skip. If it's yes, you would skip 9A and 9H. So we skip all this, but the date should be filled in. Now you notice that you cannot put the date in here. When I try to put the date in, nothing happens. So this is an error in the form. So what you got to do here is just leave this blank, and when you print it out, you just have to handwrite the date here with the month, the day, and the year. Okay, so USCIS they do make mistakes, and they do make a lot of mistakes. Well, not a lot, but they do make mistakes. So here is one that you're supposed to put the date here, but you cannot. So again, you would have to print this out and just physically write in the date. And writing in the date instead of typing it online is fine. So if you've been living in other addresses, then you would have to, within the last 5 years, okay, this only refers to the last 5 years, then you would put another address here. And if you've been living in another address within the last 5 years, then you would have to go all the way down, and you would have to fill it out, your last address here. You would put the page number, the part number, item number, and we'll get to this later. So back to the form here. If the petitioner is working, they need to put the name of the employer. Okay, again, and this is the employment information for the last 5 years again. So you would put your employer information here. So let's say I work at McDonald's. Okay, notice that I cannot put a hyphen here, so we just put McDonald's. And then put in street address where you work, let's say 1450. Trail Grove. Okay, and then put in here Beaufort, and put in this state that you live in this case Georgia, and just put in 30009. These addresses, of course, are all fictitious address. Okay, and then you state your occupation. Let's say you put a cook, and you put in this date you started, and you're putting in the most recent employer information. So here, let's say you started in 2018, February 15th of 2018. Let's say you started then. And then here it tells you when your employment ended. Now, if you're still working here, then you just leave this thing blank. Okay, leaving it blank means that you're still working there, that it hasn't ended, so you just leave it blank. And then if you have another employer that you worked within the last 5 years, you would put the information here, the occupation, and the date that you started and ended. Okay, and here you can put your gender. Let's say you're male, and let's say you were born June 1st, 1990, and you're single or divorced. If you've been married before and you're divorced, you would put divorce. If you've never been married, then you would put single. Okay, if you're married and you're trying to sponsor a fiance visa, that is gonna get you either denied or you're gonna get a problem because you cannot marry your fiance visa unless you're first divorced or single or widowed. Okay, so here you can click off single, divorced, widowed, but not married. If you click married, you're most likely to get denied. You tell where you were Okay, here you tell where you were born. So let's say you were born in St. Louis. Okay. St. Louis and the province, Missouri. Missouri SMS. Okay, so Missouri. And the country you were born, USA. And then here you have to put information about your parents. Okay, so let's say your parents' name is Doe. Jack Doe. So your father's name is Jack Doe. And his birthday. Let's say this is his birthday. Okay, and your father. And then you would put where your father was born. USA. Again, let's say he was born in okay, it says St. Paul, Minnesota. Okay, Minnesota. Okay. And next you would put your mother's name. Okay. Doe. And let's say Claire Doe. If your mother has a middle name, you would put it right there. Let's say she was born on 1962. She's female. Country, let's say she was born in the USA. And she was born in Dallas, Texas. And yes, whether your mother was here asks whether you were previously married. Okay, so if you were previously married, you would put yes and the name of your spouse and when your marriage ended. Let's say in this case it is no. And asks you here if you are a US citizen. In order to sponsor or in order to apply for a fiance visa and get it approved, you must be a citizen, a US citizen and over 21 years old. So you have to click one of these to say you are a citizen. If you were born in the United States, then you're automatically a citizen and you will click here yes. If you're naturalized, naturalization means that you were not born in the United States, but you got your citizenship through another person or through sponsorship, or that you got your citizenship not being born in the United States, by being sponsored basically by somebody else. Okay, another one is that if your parents, another way you can get your US citizenship, if you obtained your U.S. citizenship. If your parents are U.S. citizenships, in some cases you are automatically a U.S. citizen. Okay, if you got your citizenship through your parents, then you would click here, yes. You would click here. And then this next question, 41, asks you if you have a certificate of citizenship or certificate of naturalization. You have to have one of these. If you don't, you would have to prove your citizenship by using some other way, like your birth certificate or a passport. So let's say here you do have your citizenship. Let's say you were naturalized and you have your citizenship certificate of naturalization. In that case, you would say yes, and then here you would put your number here. Okay, so let's say you put in your number. Okay, whatever that number is, and then where you got your citizenship certificate. Let's say in this case we got it from Georgia. Okay, and then the date you got it from, and this should be on your certificate of citizenship or naturalization. And let's say you got it in February 1st of 2017. Okay, so you fill in this information, and then here this next question is: have you ever filed for a I-129F or any other beneficiary? In other words, have you ever filed this form before for somebody else? If you say yes, then you need to answer this question here from 44 to 46. You have to tell who that person was, and in that case they should have an A number. Okay, but if they don't, or you can't find one, just leave it blank. You need to have their last name, first name, middle, and the date you filed for that other person. Okay, and what happened to that application? Was it approved, denied, revoked? Is it still in progress? Okay, if you have filed before, and if it's been denied or revoked, that might cause some trouble. If it would depend on why it was denied or revoked. If it was approved, that also might cause a problem. It depends on what happened to the case. Did that person get approved, but they ultimately did not use the fiancé visa? In other words, they came to the United States and decided not to get married with you and went back. Then if they went back, that would not be a problem. But if she was or he was approved and they came to the United States, and then but that person somehow continued to stay in the United States illegally, okay, that could be a problem, and in that case you need to contact an immigration lawyer to fix it all up. Okay, so in this case, let's say there was no other fiancé that you sponsored, so you would say no, and then you will go up here, and it says, do you have any children under the age of 18? Okay, if you do, you say yes, and here you write there the age of those children. If there's more than 2 children, you would have to go down here and fill out. You have to put the page number, the item number, or the part number and the item number, and you would continue it on here. Okay, so this part here is to put in the extra information that you didn't have room to put up here. So that's what it's for. So here, if you do have under children, let's say you have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, just put their ages in. Okay. Okay, that means you would probably been married before or you were divorced now. So that's why you have these two children. Okay. Uh, you must be divorced or single in order to sponsor a fiancé visa. If you're still married, it's unlikely that you'll get approved. So you need to you need to show that you intend to marry your fiancé once she comes here into the United States, and that you were going to marry the fiancé within the 90-day period as soon as she arrives, as soon as she steps foot into the United States. Okay, so that is the purpose of the fiancé visa. Okay, and here on item number 50, you click all the states that you've been in. Okay, or all the countries that you've lived in. Okay, and if you need more room, if you've been to a different state or different country, and you need more room, you have to go down again, all the way down to the bottom. State the page number, the part number, the item number, and continue on here. Okay, so this is an extra place where when there's no room to put it in on top, you come here and you continue down here. Okay, so so let's say you've been to, let's do this. Let's say you've been to Alabama, or let's see. Okay, let's say you've been to Hawaii. Okay, so you would put USA. Let's say you also been to that you also lived in let me see here, California. Okay, well, California. USA. Okay, and let's say you also lived in you also lived in Texas for a number of years. Then, and there's no room here, so you memorize. So what you have to know, that's page 4, part 1, item number 51. I'm sorry, item number 50. So it's page 4, part 1, item 50. So you would go down here because you want to show that you also lived in Texas. So you go page 4, part 1, item number 50, and here you would continue. Okay, you would say state, and that was you lived in Texas, and then you would go here country, and then USA. So this is a continuation on item number, page number 4, part number 1, item number 50. Okay, so that's how you do a continuation down here. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so if you need more room, you would have to do it at the bottom. Okay, now here, dear, ask for your beneficiary's name. Okay, information about your beneficiary. Okay, let's say the fiancé that you're sponsoring, let's say her name is Brown. Her last name is Brown. And her first name is Jane. Okay, and let's say she has no middle name, so you just leave it blank. Here, you would leave this blank and this blank. If this is your first, since this is your first time filing for a fiancé visa, if you applied for a fiancé visa before and you're doing an update, then you would have these information. Okay, but since this is the first time applying, we'd leave it blank. you will put the name of your fiance, the birthday of your fiance. Let's say it is May 12th, and she was born in, let's say, 1995. Okay, she's female, she's single, and she was born in okay, let's say born in London, England. And let's say she's a country citizen is England. Okay, so we'll put that. And if your fiance have used any other names, previous names, then you would put it here. If not, just leave it blank. And what her address here. So let's say her mailing address, let's say is, okay, so her mailing address, this was just Jane Brown, and say her mailing address is 5555 let's say her address is Main Street, and it is in London. Okay, and since Londons don't have a state, here we'll put England. And London, you will look up what province London is, and find out the postal code. Okay, so let's say that's the London postal code. So we have that, and then you have to list your beneficiary's physical address for the last 5 years. So let's say the physical address here is the same as the mailing address. So let's just copy and paste this. And London again. Here we would say the postal code is that. England. And you would put what date you started living there. So let's say, let's just put in the date. Okay, and you're still living there, so it's present. So if you have other addresses that if you lived within the 5 years, then you would list the second address here. But in this case, we lived here, let's say, in this physical address, we just lived here for the last 5 years. So we stop here. So then you put your beneficiary's employment, or in this case, your fiance's employment. The beneficiary is your fiance, so you would put his or her employer. So if your fiance worked at a company, you would put her information here and what her occupation is. So let's say your fiance works at a Burger King. You'll put here, and you put the address of her workplace. Okay. Okay, we'll just use the same Main Street. And let's say she's working in London. And the postal code is the same, let's say. And it's in England. And let's say she is a cashier there. Okay, and then you would put the date she started working, and so let's say she started working on, oops, 2016, and let's say she's still working there, and then if that's the case, you would just leave this blank. Okay, you would just leave it blank. If she works another place within the last 5 years, then you would put the employment information here, the date she started and the date she ended. Okay, only if it's within the last 5 years. And then you would put the information about your beneficiary's parents or your fiance's parents. Okay, in this case, you would put, let's say, okay, so let's say her parents' name, her father's name is Alex Brown, and the date that the father was born. Okay, so let's say he was born in England, city London, and country residence would be England. Okay, let's say the father actually died. If that's the case, then you would put here country of residence. You would just put here deceased. Okay, to show that he died and is no longer. You would also put up here deceased here too, deceased. Okay, so if the father is dead, you don't put the city and the country of residence. You just put deceased. Okay, let's say the mother is living. Okay, so you would put her first name and last name here, the date she was born, okay, you would put female and the country that she was born. Let's say she was born in France. Then the beneficiary's mother was born in France. Let's say Paris. And if she's still alive, you would put the country where she's still living. And let's say in this case it would be England. And here it asks you whether your fiancé or beneficiary was married before. If she was, you would put yes, and then you would put the name of the spouse that she was married before. Unless in this case, let's say it's no. Okay, has your beneficiary ever been in your state? If it's yes, then you have to fill out 38A to 38H. Okay, so let's say she did enter the United States and she came here as a visitor, so you would put visitor. Now, if she entered the United States, she would have what's called a I-94 record number, and here we'll show you how to get this number using your passport and going onto a government website, because you can also find this number. Sometimes this number can be on your passport, but if it's not in your passport or you lost this number, then you need to go to a government website and retrieve this number using your passport. Okay, and so let's say the date of arrival was Okay, so let's say she visited. That you get this information on your passport also. It should be stamped on your passport when she arrived. Okay. If you don't have that information, just leave it blank. You would just leave it blank. And here you would put the passport number, whatever that is. And here, again, whoever enters the United States will have an I-94 record number. Okay, every person that is not a U.S. citizen or green card holder that arrives in the United States would have this number. Okay, now this I-94 will have an expiry date. Okay, now sometimes, like for example, students don't actually have an expiry date. They have something. It have, instead of a date, they have what's called it's written D/S, which means duration of status. So if you're here as a student, you might not actually have an expiry date, but you would have something called a duration of status, or D/S. In that case, you can just write it in here, D/S. Okay. In other cases, if you were a visitor, you would have an expiry date, and that would be on your passport. If it's not on your passport, you can go onto the government website and try to find that information. If it's not there either, just leave it blank. Okay. So let's say in this case, the expiry date was 12/03/2012. Okay, so let's say this was the expiry date for in our scenario. Okay, and this travel document number, you would leave this blank. This refers to some other type of document, in which you probably don't have, so you leave this blank. Country of issuance for the passport. So if your passport, if from England, your passport would be from England, so you would put England here. In our scenario, the beneficiary or the fiance is living in England, so their passport would be from England. And here you put the date, expiration date of the passport. So let's say it's okay. So let's say that's. And does the beneficiary have any children? If they do have children, you would say yes, and you would list the name and the country of birth of each child that she has, okay, and the date of birth, whether the child resides with the beneficiary. Okay, so let's say the beneficiary in this case does have a child. So you say, okay, last name first. Okay, and the country of birth, let's say it's London. Date of birth, let's say okay, and this is how we reside with the beneficiary. You can say yes or no. And if you have another child, okay, if the child does not reside with the beneficiary or with the fiance, then you would put the address where that child is staying here. Okay, in this case we said yes, we would skip this place, skip this section and go on. Okay, this is the address where your beneficiary intends to live when they arrive in the United States, and that would be the address. Usually it's the address of the petitioner. So in this case, So let's go ahead and put a I-94 number here. Okay, and then we'll continue. If the beneficiary have children, they would put it here, and then if the child of the beneficiary or the fiance is not living with her, she would put no and put the address where the child is living, and then this is the address where the beneficiary will be living once she comes to the United States. So this address is usually the address of the petitioner. So be 123 Main Street. Okay, and that would be in Duluth, Georgia. Okay. Zip code. And then you can put the beneficiary's phone number here. Let's say 770 and then 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. And here you would put the beneficiary's physical address abroad. Okay, so you can put here the beneficiary's address. In this case, okay, so this is the same address here. Okay, so what I have here, and then you can put London, England, and her phone number, whatever that is. 1 2 3. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, whatever her phone number is, and then the postal code, and the postal code is here. Okay, postal code. So go ahead and put the postal code here. Okay. Okay. So that was what was it? EC1A. Okay, so that's the postal code of your fiance's physical address abroad. And then here we have this section. It says here the beneficiary's name and address in his or her native alphabet. What this means that if you're from country like China, maybe India, or one of the Middle Eastern countries, or where they don't use the Roman numeral alphabet, then you can put you would put the name that it is written in their native language. So if your fiance was from China, let's say, you would write her name in Chinese. Now, a lot of the computers don't have a program that can write in Chinese, or some other characters besides English. If you do have that kind of program, you can type it in. If you cannot, what you gotta do here is just after you print this application out, you gotta handwrite the name and the address. Okay, handwrite the name and the address of your fiance or beneficiary. Okay, and it's okay to handwrite it in. Okay, so that's what you gotta do. In this case, we don't have that In this case, our fiance is from London, so they use the same language, English, so we don't need to fill this out, okay? So we skip that. So here's, is the fiance related to you? No. Now, if your fiance is related to you, say if she's your cousin or something that's closer, then you have to list it here, okay? Now, is that gonna have an effect on your fiance application? It might. It just doesn't mean they're gonna reject it. However, it will cause a red flag, and they might question you on it, okay? Because they might think you're just trying to help a relative, okay? So it doesn't mean that you'll get denied. It does not. However, it will raise a red flag. So you just need to be aware of that. If you think it's gonna be a problem, you might want to contact an immigration lawyer in order to get a better answer. Okay. Have you and your fiance met in the last 2 years immediately before filing this petition? You have to say yes to this question. If you say no, then you are probably gonna get denied, because one of the requirements or one of the rules is that, or immigration rules is that you must have met your fiance 2 years before you filed this petition. In other words, within the 2 years before you filing this petition. So let's say you're filing the petition right now. You must have met your fiance in person, okay, in person, before today, and within the 2 years before you are filing this petition, okay? So let's say I'm gonna file this petition right now, which is January 24th, 2019, okay? Then if you met your fiance on January 24th, 2017 and after, you should be okay. If you met before January 24th, 2017, then you will probably have your application denied, because it has to be during the 2 years immediately before filing this petition. So you're gonna have to go back and meet your fiance again in person before you file this, if you've met your fiance more than 2 years ago, okay? More than 2 years ago from now, okay? Or if you haven't even met her in person, then you have to stop this application and actually go and meet your fiance before you can actually file this application. So that is one of the requirements of the fiance visa application. Okay. Now the next question here is, how did you meet your okay, if here's okay, this here is an exemption. Say you didn't meet your fiance in person within the last 2 years, then you have to give why you should be exempted from meeting that person. Now, if you haven't met your fiance within the last 2 years, there is an exemption. However, getting that exemption is very difficult. You need to go see an immigration lawyer, okay? I think the best thing to do is actually go and see your fiance if you haven't met her in person, okay? Because that's one of the requirements. Now, to get the exemption is very difficult, so it's advised that you actually meet your fiance before you apply for this fiance visa. Okay. Now the next question here is, how did you meet your fiance? Now, if you met through what's called a international marriage broker, okay, and what this international marriage broker is, there are some matchmaking services on the internet, or these companies that match, like matchmaking services. Okay. Um, if you met your fiance through those, then you have to say yes, and you have to actually name the company uh, that you met. Okay, now some of the online dating services are not international marriage brokers, okay? And you can sometimes find out by going onto their website, and it'll tell you that they're not an international marriage broker. Or okay, so um, if you met your fiance through not through an online dating service, then you don't have to worry about it. You just say no and skip to the next step. However, if you did meet your fiance through an online dating service, then it might be considered an international marriage broker. So you're gonna have to do some research to determine whether the um, online dating service is an international marriage broker. Okay, we'll go through this more in detail later on. So if you met your fiancé through an international marriage broker, then you need to fill this all out. The name of the international marriage broker, the website, the street number, town, and their phone number, country, and all that. Okay. The next part is the consular processing information. This is the place where your fiance will have her interview. Okay, you will be at a U.S. consulate, and it'll be near where she lives. So here you should put, in our case, it's England.
And the city would be London. Okay, so this is the place that she will have her interview. There should be a U.S. consulate in London or around that area. So this is you list the city and the country where your fiance is living, so that she would have her interview in that area. Okay, so then you would go here and they ask you some information background about the petitioner, which would be you. Is they ask you if you ever been temporarily or permanently been subject to temporarily or permanently protection or restraining order, either civil or criminal. You have to say no to all these. Now, if you are under a restraining order, okay, this could potentially cause your application to be rejected. So you need to contact a lawyer. Okay, so for same thing as here, if you've been convicted or arrested for domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, child neglect, anything like that, if you say yes to that, you will need to contact an immigration lawyer. Okay, and that is beyond the scope of this this video. Okay, and same thing here. If you committed homicide, murder, manslaughter, rape, or whatever, all this here, if you say yes, if you have been convicted or arrested on those charges, or you've done any of that, then you need to contact an immigration lawyer. So in this case, we have to say no. Same thing here, say no. Okay, now it says here if you've been arrested or convicted of any specified crimes, then you have to tell the reason why you were convicted for that crime, and you might have a defense here. But in this case, if you have been convicted of those type of arrest or crime, you need to contact again an immigration lawyer, because it can cause a potential problem in your application. Okay, and same thing here. You have to say no. If you say yes to this, you need to contact an immigration lawyer. Okay, and let's go here. Here, this is the multiple flyer waiver request information. Now, if you filed for a fiancé visa multiple times in the past, you might need to get a waiver. Okay, if you've never applied for a fiancé visa before, then you don't have to worry about this. Okay. Also, if you are the reason why they have this is the USCIS is trying to determine if you're doing it not because you intend to get married, but you're just trying to help somebody get to the US. In other words, you're committing some kind of fraud. Okay, so if you are a multiple filer, multiple filer, you should contact an immigration lawyer, because it does get a little bit more. It can get a little bit more complicated, and it's beyond the scope of this video. Okay, and here they ask you about your biographical information. Here you can you just click the appropriate. If you're Hispanic, you would click this. If you're not, you click this, and you tell what race you are. Okay, let's say white, how tall you are. Okay. Okay, so let's say you're 5 feet 9 inches. Let's say you weigh 180 pounds. 80 pounds. Let's say you have brown eyes, black hair. Okay, and then you go on to the next. Here it's asking you whether you understand, if you can read and understand English, and that you understand everything in this application form. You have to understand all the instructions and all these here instructions and the questions. You have to say that you understood them. Okay, if you don't understand them, and let's say your English is not your first language, then you need to have an interpreter to interpret all these questions, and then your interpreter has to fill out this part here, saying that they did the interpretation of the questions and instructions on this application. Okay. This part here, I might request preparedness. So if somebody prepared this application, if somebody else besides you that prepared this application, then you need to click here and put that person's name. Okay, so let's say you didn't prepare this application, but somebody else did. Let's say your friend did. Let's say Bob. Bob Jones. Your friend filled this out. Or maybe let's say you had an immigration attorney fill it out. Then you would put that person's name here. Let's say in this case, Bob Jones was the person who filled out this application on your behalf. Then you will put it here. Here you put the petitioner or the sponsor's phone number. If they have a cell phone, they would put their cell phone number here, and their email if they have an email address. Okay.
Okay, so if you I had a preparer fill out this form, then you will put your name here. So if somebody other than you, the petitioner, if somebody other than the petitioner had filled this out, then you would put their name here, and they would put their phone number, mobile number, and email here. and then they would have to go down here to where the preparer's mailing address is and fill out their mailing address and their contact information, telephone number and email address if any. Then they have to say whether they are, if the preparer is an attorney or they are not an attorney. If they are not an attorney, they would click this here. If they are an attorney, if the preparer was done by immigration, so if the form was done by an immigration attorney, then the immigration attorney would click here and click here to say that they were an attorney that helped fill out the form. And then they would put their name here and the business organization if there was any. And then the preparer would sign and date here. Now, if there was no preparer, then you don't need to check this part here. And you, as the petitioner, if you, the petitioner, filled out this form by yourself, then you just sign here and date here. Okay, and that would be the end of it.